In 1994, two cave diving pioneers attempted to become the first divers to reach the bottom of one of the deepest sinkholes on Earth, aiming to set the world diving depth record. But things went horrifyingly wrong. This is their story. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Born in 1949, future diving legend Sheck Exley grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. He was the kind of boy who would disappear into the woods near his home searching for hidden streams and caves. He and his brother Edward were often seen free diving at Wakulla Springs, one of the largest and deepest freshwater springs in the world. With its crystal clear waters and lush vegetation, it became a popular swimming spot for locals. But beneath its calm surface lies a vast network of winding underwater caves sinking to depths of up to 110 meters. For Sheck and Edwards, the deep, clear waters made Wakulla Springs the perfect spot to practice their diving abilities. With a basic depth gauge in hand, they'd compete against each other, always trying to break previous records. When Sheck began to hit a wall in the limits of freediving, his attention turned to a new technology that was making waves. The aqua lung, which became the basis of modern scuba gear, had been invented only a few years before Sheck was born, and it ignited a movement of recreational divers. Diving with an air tank opened up a whole new world for him, allowing him to spend extended time in the underwater caves that had fascinated him since boyhood. Diving with an air tank allowed him to explore caves more thoroughly, but it came with dangers. And at the time, there were no established rules, mentors, or standardized equipment. So Sheck became his own teacher, adapting gear, developing techniques, and prioritizing safety. His meticulous approach would lay the foundation for modern cave diving standards and cement his legacy as one of the sport's most influential figures. Sheck Exley wanted nothing more than to dedicate his life to the sport he loved, but as a young adult, he needed a way to pay the bills. So he became a high school math teacher, and while it seems tame compared to his extreme hobby, it was a job that allowed him to spend summers and academic breaks exploring caves and expanding the sport's knowledge. Over the following years, he logged hundreds of dives, wrote foundational books, and became the first diver to descend below 800 feet, a feat achieved only by 23 divers as of 2024. He also became the first person to log over 1,000 cave dives. Sheck was both defying the sport and pushing the very limits of human physical achievement. But of course, diving to such extreme depths comes with enormous risk. Among the most dangerous are nitrogen narcosis and decompression sickness. But this is another area where Sheck Exley stood out from the crowd. Nitrogen narcosis occurs when the nitrogen in a diver's breathing gas becomes highly pressurized at extreme depths, dissolving into the bloodstream and tissues at higher concentrations. This increased nitrogen alters how nerve signals are transmitted in the brain, leading to a range of symptoms. These can vary from a mild drunk or buzzed feeling to more severe effects like auditory and visual hallucinations, impaired judgment, or even unconsciousness. But nitrogen narcosis isn't the only nitrogen-related danger divers face at such depths. Decompression sickness, or the bends, happens when nitrogen, which dissolves into the body under high pressure, forms bubbles during a rapid ascent. This occurs because the pressure decreases too quickly, causing the nitrogen to leave the tissue as a gas bubble, similar to how bubbles appear in a soda when you open the bottle. These bubbles can cause joint pain, fatigue, and in severe cases, nerve damage, paralysis, or even death. To avoid the bends, divers must ascend slowly and make decompression stops to let the nitrogen leave the body safely. Unlike nitrogen narcosis, which usually resolves on its own, decompression sickness is dangerous and requires urgent treatment in a hyperbaric chamber. Because of these hazards, most divers wouldn't dream of attempting Sheck's extreme dives. To put it into perspective, the depth limit for recreational diving under modern standards is 40 meters, and for expert divers with specialized gear, it can be up to 100 meters. But Sheck regularly dove far beyond these limits, already holding records up to 243 meters before his attempt at Zacaton. And interestingly, over his years of diving to greater and greater depths, Sheck discovered that he had an unusually high tolerance against nitrogen narcosis and decompression sickness. On dives where other members in his party fell victim to these conditions, Sheck came out completely unfazed. Combined with his hardcore training and meticulous preparations, Sheck was the ideal specimen to break world depth records. He was determined to keep pushing the limits of the sport, but he'd already explored most of the extreme spots in his area. So when a fellow diver, Jim Boyd, mentioned a massive underwater sinkhole in northeastern Mexico, Sheck was ready to pack his bags. Jim had been performing routine inspection dives at Zacaton, but the ultimate challenge, reaching its bottom, remained unconquered. Together, Sheck and Jim set their sights on becoming the first humans to descend to the astonishing depth of 339 meters, or 1,112 feet. But being seasoned veterans, they knew better than to rush such a massive goal. So they spent the next months of creating an extensive plan and assembling the proper gear and team. The most difficult logistical aspect of an extreme dive like this is gas management. The deeper you go, the faster gas is used. And at 1,000 feet underwater, the pressure is about 31 times greater than at the surface. This means a diver uses gas 31 times faster because the regulator must deliver air at the surrounding pressure to fill their lungs. For example, a tank that lasts over an hour near the surface would be empty in just 2 to 3 minutes at 1,000 feet, making strict gas management critical for survival. Sheck and Jim's plan involved carrying multiple tanks filled with different concentrations and mixtures of gases on their descent. Since descending doesn't carry the same risk as ascending, the plan was to descend at a rapid rate of about 30 meters per minute, minimizing the time and gas spent to reach the bottom. Therefore, the total descent would last about 11 minutes if all went as planned. But to allow enough time for decompression, the ascent back up would have to be cautiously performed over 9 hours. They'd have a support dive team above that would be waiting at various depths with backup tanks for their gradual ascent back to the surface. Confident in their preparations, Sheck and Jim arrived at Zacaton on April 6, 1994 with their piles of gear and support team. The surface of Zacaton lies 20 meters below jagged cliffs and dense vegetation, making direct entry impractical. Instead, Sheck Exley and Jim Bowden entered through a nearby spring that connects to the massive sinkhole. They were joined by support divers Ann Kristovich and Marcus Gary, along with Sheck's wife Mary Ellen and Jim's wife Karen. The support team secured weight guidelines spaced 30 feet apart, extending to the sinkhole's bottom to help navigate the dark, disorienting descent. Jim descended first with Sheck, trailing 10 seconds behind to avoid collisions. Beyond 30 meters, light from above vanished entirely, leaving only their flashlights to illuminate the abyss as they plunged into complete darkness, unable to even see each other. The first problem sank in around 750 feet for Jim. He realized he had been descending much faster than their planned rate and began to experience the telltale tremors of a condition known as HPNS, or high-pressure nervous syndrome. It's not fully understood, but HPNS seems to result from the nervous system's reaction to extreme pressure at great depths, which can lead to dizziness, clouded thinking, and body tremors. While HPNS symptoms often subside with slower descent or acclimatization, they can become debilitating if left unchecked. Pressing on cautiously, Jim reached 900 feet, only to face another issue. His second tank gauge showed just 1,000 psi, far lower than the expected 1,800 for this depth. Because of this shocking reading, Jim made the critical decision to abort the mission and began the grueling 9-hour ascent. Back at the surface, the support team had been watching the air bubbles, which would be their only sign of men below for most of the dive. Bubbles from Jim and Sheck broke the surface near their respective guide ropes about every 10 to 15 seconds. But at minute 18, Sheck's bubble stopped. Now there was a ledge that jutted out underwater that would have caught their air bubbles for a brief duration of their dive, but Sheck was supposed to be past that at this point. For the next 9 hours, the team was helpless to do anything other than wait and support Jim during the slow and cautious ascent up, assisting him with underwater tank swaps. When Jim finally surfaced, he had set the new world diving depth record, but this was no time to celebrate. Exhausted but coherent, he began relaying the harrowing details of his dive. Jim described how he had lost sight of Sheck early on, which wasn't usual when given the pitch-black conditions and narrow beam of their flashlights. But the absence of Sheck's air bubbles after the 18-minute mark had already told the support team the devastating truth. Jim, having been occupied with his own unique challenges during the dive, had clung to the hope that Sheck might have found a way to recover. But for those on the surface, the hours of endless waiting with no sign of his bubbles confirmed what they feared most. Sheck Exley, a pioneer and legend in the world of cave diving, was gone. The loss of Sheck Exley sent shockwaves through the diving community. He wasn't only a trailblazer who had set countless records and redefined the limits of what was possible underwater, but also a mentor, writer, friend, and advocate for safety in a sport where danger is a constant companion. Despite his legendary status, Sheck was approachable and generous with his knowledge, always showing great humility and respect to his peers. He mentored many newcomers to the sport and shared his experiences to improve safety for everyone. His shared knowledge and safety protocols continue to save countless lives decades after his passing. In the days that followed, the team grappled with grief and the haunting question of what exactly had gone wrong. Determining exactly what went wrong during Sheck Exley's dive remains a matter of speculation, as no one witnessed the events in Zacaton's crushing depths. One possibility is that HPNS played a role. Earlier in the dive, Jim had experienced tremors from HPNS, and it's likely Sheck did too as he descended even deeper. These tremors can make it hard to control your movements, which is deadly when precise timing and coordination are essential. Even a small mistake like losing your grip on a guideline or fumbling with equipment can quickly spiral into a life-threatening situation at such extreme depths. When Jim Bowden and a team of support divers recovered Sheck's body later, he was found tangled in the guideline. This raised even more questions. Some believe the guideline might have snagged him accidentally as he struggled with HPNS or another issue. Others think he may have tangled himself on purpose to try and stabilize his body if he was disoriented or losing consciousness. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible survival stories. Hope to see you in the next one.